Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 3 of X-Men From the Ashes, written by Jed MacKay. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. Now this issue opened as a strike team teleported within the X-Men factory in Alaska in a burst of light. The person who led the team there was Vanisher, and he was surprised at how the X-Men were coming down in the world. From a tropical island for just them, to a repurposed factory in the frozen north. With that stated, the team went on to say that their objectives are programmed into their HUD maps. Now oddly enough, they had a no casualties rule at the moment. So with the deed done, one of the armored soldiers informed Vanisher that he did his job, and Lundqvist would give him what he wanted. Following that, the soldiers proceeded to become transparent and dashed down the hallway. Following the X-Men's base of operations being infiltrated, we jump over to Scott driving a pickup truck through the snowy roads while on the phone talking with Rogue. But unfortunately, she hangs up on him. Now if we want to see the rest of their conversation that led up to that point, we will have to check it out in issue number 2 of Uncanny X-Men. But anyway, once Scott got off the phone, he immediately called Beast and said Rogue didn't say it, but she didn't have to, because Rogue is going to move on Graymalkin. Just like Scott, Beast was also shocked because he went on to say, with what resources, because all she had with her was Gambit, Jubilee, Logan, and a few kids that tagged along. And to make things worse, Rogue's team was currently living in the woods and had just taken in 4 strays, which means they had a big chance of getting into a pinch or getting killed. So as Cyclops pulled into the city, he exited the truck in front of a diner and once out, he told Hank if Rogue's forces were gearing up to fight, then his own team will have to move up their plans. To this statement, Beast wasn't too happy about it, because he went on to ask Cyclops if he could persuade them to stop for now. Now this made Scott laugh, because telling Rogue, Gambit, Jubilee, and Wolverine to do anything is almost impossible because they are some of the most pig-headed mutants to ever exist. As their conversation started to come to an end, Beast ended his transmission by asking Cyclops to give his love to Agent Lundqvist. And at that moment, Agent Robin exited her vehicle and introduced herself for the first time to Cyclops as a large number of guards surrounded them and watched in full battle rattle. So, as the two spoke, the officer asked if this would be a regular occurrence in the town from now on. And to this, Cyclops couldn't help but to apologize and inform the chief that he will talk to the person he is meeting with inside. Once inside the diner, Cyclops went on to ask Agent Lundqvist if this was how they were going to do it moving forward, by making him look bad in front of the whole town. Funny enough, the agent replied by saying, yeah, because Cyclops also made him look bad, but his embarrassment was in front of the entire country. So as Agent Lundqvist continued to drink his milkshake, we jumped back over to the HQ with Eric sitting behind Temper, and the first thing he asked her was if she ever gets cold. Now Temper responded by saying she never gets cold. With that statement made, Eric went on to ask if she named herself that because Temper cannot be burned by fire or ice, because those elements only make her stronger, like glass, or better yet steel. Now this was of no surprise to Temper, because she knew that Eric was well aware of how strong she had become over her time as a mutant and everything she went through. Now this was something that Eric was far too familiar with for out of anyone. He is the one to know what it is to be tempered by tragedy. And Eric knows the part he played in her tempering, because back on Krakoa, Eric was the one who sentenced Necra and Temper to the pit. Because the crime that was broken was kill no man, which was ironic because Magneto was responsible for a huge body count. With that hypocrisy addressed, Tempest went on to say, out of all the mutants on their team, she is the only one who doesn't miss Krakoa. Because unlike Beast, who was never there, she was made to see Krakoa's utopian moralizing for what it was. And she was also able to see the leadership for what they were too. In both cases, she has seen it as brittle steel that was easily broken. Now following that outburst of emotion, Temper received a psychic message from Kid Omega, and the first thing he states is that he hates to admit it, but Cyclops was right. Now before we get to see exactly what Cyclops was right about, we transition back over to Scott sitting at the table with the agent. And during their interaction, Scott tells the agent that he seems upset and he assumes that it may have something to do involving San Francisco. Now this was an understatement, because the agent went on to say, the US government kindly gave the X-Men that factory under the understanding that they would stay up there. Now to that statement, Cyclops replied by saying there was never an understanding, but rather an implication, and Cyclops doesn't deal in implications. Following that, Scott went on to say, do you know what was understood? It was understood that Cyclops was doing the government a favor by taking the factory, because it wasn't a gift the government gave them, it was a settlement for his court case back in the Fall of X. And on the side note, I kind of like what they are doing with Cyclops, for they are giving him more of an edge and understanding of his political power, because Cyclops even went as far as to say, it was hard to forget, considering the name was Scott Summers versus the United States of America. Now that statement pissed the agent off, and just as he started to get loud, Cyclops immediately cut him off and said, "No, you listen to me, Orcus killed scores of his species and unlawfully imprisoned many, many more. And he was held and tortured and then readied for a show trial and execution. My eyes were sewn shut, my wife was murdered, and all that was done with the tacit permission of the United States, all with an understanding. So when I settled for the factory, for the damages done to me, personally, that was a gift, because I could have won so much more." Now with that mic drop moment, Scott sat back and said, "Is one picking up the check, because our cook's a vegetarian, which means we're all vegetarians and he could use a BLT. Now one is short for the Office of National Emergency, but anyway, following that, we hop back over to Kid Omega standing over a passed out Beast. And while he was there, he went on to say that they are under attack, but Beast seems to be okay, aside from the smell. But he thinks he's always smelled like that. But anyway, Kid Omega went on to look through the last 2 minutes of Beast's conscious memories and downloaded it into everyone else's. According to this info dump, Beast was hit by an energy beam from the front, but he had no idea who did it. Now that mystery was quickly solved, as Psylocke states that attackers are using active camouflage, and considering neither herself nor Quentin was able to pick up their minds, then they must also be wearing psyblockers. Now all this points towards a well-prepared tactical team that knows exactly what they are doing. With the threat situation high, Quentin went on to start listing all potential targets out loud, but was quickly stopped when Psylocke psychically told him not to say Ben's name so all could hear, because they don't need their enemies overhearing anything that they can use. With that established, Juggernaut stated, "How am I supposed to fight what I can't see?" To which Magic replied by saying, "Get your head in the game." They are very clever and manage to shield themselves from psychic scans, thermal imaging, and the naked eye. But I have spent years with demons, so I question if our intruders could hide their souls. So as Magic's eyes started to glow, we then jump back over to Scott in the diner with the agent, continuing their conversation with the agent saying, "The fact remains that in San Francisco there was a disaster. A mutant disaster with the X-Men in the middle of it." Now Scott quickly tries to correct him by saying, "A mutant disaster that the X-Men diffused where one person died, a person who was a mutant." With that out there, the agent went on to say that this situation had hit social media like a thermobaric bomb. And at that moment, the agent showed Scott a video of himself talking to Ben and stating that Ben had manifested his powers at an older age. Now, this is a big deal, because on camera, Scott is admitting that people could become mutants outside of the normal activation window. So, this led some people to believe that mutants are contagious, which would make mutants a disease. Following that bombshell future problem, we hop back over to the battle, and everything is going according to plan, as Magic and Kane is now able to fight against the enemies at their door. So as you may have guessed, things didn't go well for their invisible friends as Kane ran through them. And on the next page, Quentin and Psylocke found their own way to face the conflict by using water. And due to the fact that no one tried to kill them, they decided to return the favor and allow them to live. So with their combined situations dealt with, Psylocke gets a mental alert, because apparently the invaders weren't after Magneto or their new guest, but rather Cerebro. Now this is a big deal, because Cerebro is their main tool of tracking down new and in danger mutants. So with the situation going from bad to worse, we then jump back over to the diner. And once there, the agent states that they have their own X-Men now, which Cyclops is fully aware of, and Cyclops knows that his brother Alex, better known as Havoc, is leading them. But Cyclops also knows that his brother was never able to operate on his level, so because of that, Scott states, "Here's what we're going to do. My team and I are going to continue to do what we're doing. And the agent and his team are going to let them do it." Now, of course, the agent saw this as a threat, which Scott had no problem with, because he went on to say, "Of course I'm threatening you, because, like he said before, he is doing America a favor." Because on his roster are Psylocke, Kid Omega, Juggernaut, and Magic, who so happens to be an assassin, a terrorist, a supervillain, and Magic is a half-demon, and on a good day, he has Magneto. So with all that firepower, the government has two options: A, allow him to have his X-Men, or B, allow him to have his Brotherhood. So with the options before the agent, we jump over to the invisible soldiers arriving at the world's last Cerebro, and right as they were preparing their charges, Temper walked into the room and stated, "That is what you all wanted. You all want to keep the mutants from finding each other in an attempt to keep them separated, divided, and fractured. So with Temper before them, the men stated that they had no problem with a little collateral damage, especially because she is a no-name mutant with no rap sheet, and just like that, they tossed their bombs. But with no hesitation, Temper caught them and immediately froze them in their tracks alongside their charges. So with the threat down, Temper walks up to the men and said that she does have a rap sheet, for she killed men who came into her home, like they did, with weapons. And because of those crimes, she had to pay for it, but lucky for them, she is done doing collateral damage. So as Temper walked out of the room, we transferred over to Scott and the agent exiting the bar. And during their interaction, the agent asked if Scott thinks that he and a handful of mutants could take on the United States of America. And to that, Scott states if they make him, and if he can't then he would just call his wife. So with that said, Magic and the rest of the team teleported on the scene. Cyclops then went on to tell the agent to tell his bosses that they don't want Scott Summers versus the United States to kick off again for real. And just like that, Cyclops told Psylocke to handle the prisoner transfer as he walked back into the diner. And on the last few panels, we see Cyclops in the bathroom having a panic attack as he struggles to control his breathing. Because up to this point, Scott has been through a lot and is the main front that is keeping the peace between both sides. So with that said, this issue of X-Men comes to an end. But anyway, down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.